On to our first artist of the day, Paul B. Lotz. He attended art college in Philadelphia, and a little later on, he tried the lost art of bronze sculpting in 2006. And lucky for us, he was hooked and has created this amazing body of work. His dodos are what first caught my eye, but surprise, surprise, he also has tons of Carrollian art as well. And he's going to talk to you about how Lewis Carroll characters directly and indirectly influence him. So, Paul, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera. And everyone, please welcome Paul B. Lotz. Appropriate, with an appropriate chepo. Wonderful. Well, I love it.
Hi,
Paul. I'm very well, thank you. How'd you like that dodo talk? That was great, right?
That was great. I'm not just talking about art, I'm talking about inspiration and seeing where Lewis Carroll got the inspiration from the dodo and from all different things. It's just really fun to see. And Mark, beautiful job. Great job.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to follow you.
Yeah. I feel I hate saying, I have scholars and artists, because I feel like you're all both, right? Like it all just melts together. Well, that too. We're all a little mad here for sure. All right, Paul, if you want to get your presentation going, I will go ahead and disappear here and come back in 20, 25 minutes. Sound good?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Right. Let's see. So, like I said, what I'm here to talk about is inspiration. When I was very young, I was very into art, and I was very fortunate to have parents that backed my passion. Not only just always gave me room to be inspired by things around me, but gave me the means to take it to the next level. They afforded to get me to college, where my eyes opened. But early on, it was this little old book, along with another book, which you might recognize the art behind me, of Dr. Seuss. So I was very interested in the abstract and bizarre. While in college, I was also given the opportunity to spend a semester over in Rome, and was really, really influenced by Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all those artists of the Renaissance. So in learning about art, the classical style of pictures, or even just the stories behind everything, really motivated me. And for good reason. I'm going to start my little presentation. Yeah. So in my art career, I've now created a kind of my own little world, and I call it a whimsical world. So what I'm starting with is the journey from Wonderland to whimsical worlds. And this particular section of my presentation is based on, throughout my whole life, the different things that I was inspired by just from the book alone. Carroll had a very different king and queen. Mine is a little more Disney-esque because I did these when I was in my teens. This was made out of polymer clay, and I was trying out my feelers for art and sculpture. So I had this polymer clay, and between Disney and Carroll, I decided just to give it a shot. Also, his footman. Mine's a little different than his, but then again, you can't copy Disney. They don't like that. Let's see. Also, when I got into college, I went for graphic design back in the 80s, which was the beginning of the computer world. And I wanted to be a little freer. So I took a ceramics class and tried my hand at sculpting. And this griffin, mythological themes were really up my alley back then, and still are. But I wanted to see how I could do with, recreating a griffin. It took me several months, and this is the outcome, and I still have it. Not with me, but it's in my family. But it was a pretty big piece and really fun to do. Really fun to do. I really would like to do it again in maybe bronze. Now, the reason that Heather reached out to me was I did this one piece. It was called I Believe. And it had to do with taking animals of land, sea, and air, all that wish they could fly, and made them able to fly by putting them on these balloons, one being pig, the other a fish, and the dodo bird. You got to love the dodo bird. It's just a lumpy ball of feathers and fun, at least that we know of. But, you know, had to give it a shot. The White Knight. Loved that drawing in his book and created one of my first sculptures was a battle of chess where all the figures were attached to this brick wall that you see. And as you pulled them all together, the walls interlocked and became a castle, and all of the figures around it looked like a battle of chess. But you can see the similarities that I was inspired by, not just the whiteness of it, but chess figure and the humanity of it, combining the two. Really, really fun. Really fun. Let's see. Humpty Dumpty, of course. I've noticed that in going to shows for my art, I meet a lot of children that come in, and the parents are always like, "Oh no, don't touch anything." And I enjoy giving them some clay and having them sculpt with me while either parents watch or, you know, they go around looking at the artwork. But in doing so, I found that children these days just don't know these old nursery rhymes or fairy tales or stories unless it's generated by some kind of computer app or movie. But I just found it fascinating to try and recreate some of these nursery rhymes into a visual today that would maybe inspire them to read the stories. And there's Humpty Dumpty, but I've also done I'm a Little Teapot and Mary, Mary, Quite Contrary and Counting Sheep, just to try and combine our history, our arts, and feed it to people today in a way that they would understand. Let's see. Mad Hatter, obviously one of my favorites. This drawing I actually found in an old sketchbook of mine, based on that same book that I read, and tried behind a drawing. This was probably when I was in my early teens, but inspired by the Mad Hatter. Since then, I did that polymer clay again of this version of the Mad Hatter, and fortunately that is gone. But then I also took it to another level. When I started doing bronze, I was inspired by a song, by songs. You know, I sit here sculpting, and in the background I play music. And Sir Elton John and Bernie Taupin, you must agree, make a wonderful duo of music and words and stories. Not that you always understand what their stories meant, but reading further into them, I found a whole new world of what their meanings were. So with this particular piece that I just did like last year, I combined 9 of their songs into one sculpture, breaking it off into multiple sculptures as well. You know, we have Rocket Man and Candle in the Wind is Marilyn sitting there on the moon. We have Benny and the Jets. We have Tiny Dancer on the bottom left to where the rocket stream is coming up. Crocodile Rock, obviously. You can see the Mad Hatter, Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters. Beautiful song, beautiful song. All about what they went through and what they saw in, I guess, the early 70s as their career was taking off. So, putting it into bronze form was really fun. I have them running along Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And at the end of Yellow Brick Road is pinball. There's a pin, you can't see behind the crocodile, but there's a little pinball game shooting up the Yellow Brick Road. And the whole piece is based on one line. And this is what inspired me to make this piece. And the piece itself is called If I Was a Sculptor. And, sitting here sculpting, listening to his music and hearing that line, I had to take on the challenge of seeing if I could do this. My goal in life is to finally meet this inspirational duo and see if they want to either like my piece or sue me for doing it. I don't know, but I don't care. We're all inspired. No one should be offended by taking on something in the past. It's fun to incorporate it into the future and trigger our minds. So that's the end of that slideshow. And where this takes me now is, what beyond Carroll have I been able to, do? And if I can figure out how to share this next presentation.
And there it is.
There it is.
Just gotta start the slideshow again to make it
There
full
it
screen.
is.
And Paul, by the way, for me, dodos will forever be lumpy balls of feathers and fun from now on.
They're fun. They really are. Okay, so let's see. In this world of inspiration, when I create my sculptures, I don't just come up with one little thing. I story evolves, and I think it's because of past inspirations that it's happened. And even as I'm sculpting, I may have a directive for my piece, but it starts taking on different shapes or different themes. And so also, now I write these little fun lyrical stories about mostly all my pieces. But here's a view of some of the works that I've done. Dr. Livingston, I presume. I started creating this piece several years ago and was at an art festival sculpting it live. And, it started out as this proper English gentleman and his wife having tea on the back of an ostrich. Of course. So as I was at the festival, I didn't quite like the balance of the piece and started tearing it apart and thought, well, explorers. So I started asking people, what should I have? And, they started giving me ideas as to what to sculpt to put on the back of Dr. Livingston's, of this explorer's ostrich. And I started asking people to name the piece. And at the end of the festival weekend, I had the piece roughly built. And this gentleman came up and said, well, that's Dr. Livingston, I presume. Now, again, this being really earlier in my career, I hadn't really been writing too many stories yet. But when he told me this, I immediately went back to my studio and read all about Dr. Livingston and found, he was a missionary. He was a doctor, so to speak. He was from England. So, of course, I had to add in, a nice mantle clock, an umbrella. He even has a box full of chickens to go with his doctor bag, his Bible, his canister of wine. But when I started creating this piece, the story evolved and became this piece, which fortunately I'm blessed to say is finally sold out within a few years. So when I started thinking of an explorer, I thought, well, Dr. Livingston is an explorer of land, but there's also, land, sea, and air. So I did this trio of pieces. And this one happens to be the spirit of Calypso, which, if you really read into it, there is a song in there from John Denver, Calypso, but also it had to do with mostly Jacques Cousteau. And again, history. I grew up in the 70s, and watching the Wondersea world of Jacques Cousteau was magical back then. I mean, you have to remember, I mean, there was nothing like that. David Attenborough nailed it these days, but Jacques Cousteau was the beginning of it, and his ship Calypso. Now, in these explorers of mine, they kind of had tragic endings. Dr. Livingston wound up catching malaria. I also did a piece, Ode to Amelia Earhart. She was my explorer of air. She died tragically in the plane. But this one, Calypso, was his fish. And to me, what I wanted to do is take their wonderful lives combined with their tragic endings to have their spirit animal, find them, pack up all their belongings, and help them travel in their afterlife following the passions they led in their life. And I just thought that was a nice twist to put on things. And again, to be able to write stories about them. Let's see. Next one. Again, history, memories, influence, inspiration. I think you can see where I was inspired by this piece, which also has a much deeper meaning. And it's the deeper meaning that I will share later in my presentation of what this crazy game is all about. We all love this game, and we fight with our families and friends to play it. So what a better title than Run Like Hell? Also in my fun of games, I started this piece also many years ago, inspired by, a barrel of monkeys. And I thought, wow, I could make a wall piece with monkeys in a barrel. And then I put it to the side thinking, who would ever want monkeys hanging on their wall? Well, fortunately, a lot of people. And this piece sold out and was asked to create another one, which became the Monkey Bar. This guy is a monkey hanging from a tree branch, hard to see in this picture, but the top guy is sitting on a tree branch, has bananas all in his hands and feet and tail. And in his one hand, you can see there is a banana with a straw and an umbrella. And this would be a banana daiquiri. And he passes the bananas down to his buddies. Well, this one also was selling quickly, so I thought of a barrel of laughs. Monkeys being so fun. And all of these monkeys you take off, play with, just like the game. I've actually played with them on the floor, spread them all out, and I was able to lift them all up to a certain height when my arm gave out. But, I thought when these guys were gone, what's more fun than a barrel of laughs? So I did a whole series now, just recently, of old-time comedians. The comedians that, again, trigger our memories, that really set the stage, so to speak, for today's comedians. So on the left here under Barrel of Laughs, I did, of course, the Three Stooges, followed by, on the left-hand side, Carol Burnett, tugging on her ear. Next to her is Laurel and Hardy. Below him is Charlie Chaplin, ending with the Three Little Rascals, Spanky, Darla, and Alfalfa. All of which, again, are intermingling between the different pieces and just fun. Laughs. The world needs a good laugh, don't we? Another piece. This one took about 10 years for me to finally come up with. I wanted to do a piece of happy hour, something that signified the times when all of our family and friends can gather, have cocktails, laugh, and have a good time. But I also, another movie and story inspired me was The Wizard of Oz, where the witch had that giant hourglass, giving Dorothy only so much time to give up those ruby slippers. That hourglass was sensational. A very sad movie prop destroyed, but one that inspired me. And as I'm thinking of how do I sculpt Happy Hour, and I'm looking at the movie and thinking hourglass, Happy Hour. So for a year and a half, I very challenged to create this piece. And it's really two bottles that are pouring out their beverage. And you can see I have, cherries and lemons and limes and ice cubes and olives and characters. I have the two little buddies there. I call them cheers. Toasting. They're educated gents, so they're standing on a book. When you flip it over on the other side, below that, you'll see the monkey. He's the bartender. He's the barfly, because behind his leg, there's a little fly too. I like adding in little hidden innuendos to my work. It makes it more fun. It's something that, a painting is a beautiful thing. You look at it and it says a lot. But with me in sculpture, I get to use all sides, different hiding places where people can still look for things and find things. And this is actually a 2-hour hourglass. So when you flip it, if you have your friends over, you invite them in, you flip it over and announce to everyone the party has begun. And when the sand runs out, get the hell out of my house. Or you could flip it again and invite them to stay longer, but when they are done, they have to do the dishes. So this was a fun piece. Let's see. Back to the Carol head era, as you call it. The fashion, the etiquette, the manners always struck me very much. So I was creating this gentleman dancing on a bottle of absinthe. And as he's doing this, he's trying to decide, is he the good guy or the bad guy? Now, in this one picture, you can see he's holding the mask up to his face. If you look through the eyes of the mask, they line up with his eyes, making it feel like he's choosing the good side. But in the story, it all comes through the slur in his voice. This is actually my first whimsical sculpture I created. I wanted something fun, and what's more fun than jesters? So he was climbing up on top of this rickety wall, talking with his little friend, and just a fun piece. The stories, I think this became my first story too. Bizarre. This is a piece that I related with Romeo and Juliet. Again, inspiration and stories. It was two separate species that could never come together. And in my story, this one fish called Toot, Toots is seashell horn, and for one night only, all the fish have let their humanities escape and their passions flourish. And these were two distant species that could never come together but that one night where she succumbed to his love. Fun. Counting sheep. Just another great concept of a story. It's about counting sheep, putting people to sleep. And in my story, the parents are asking the moon to please wake the sheep up, put the kids to bed because mom and dad need their sleep too, and their alone time. Maestro. One of my favorite pieces. And the story that came out of this helped me build the piece. What you see here is a lovely giraffe with monkeys all over it playing music. So I want to read you the story to give you a little insight as to where my crazy head goes. It may look like a very fun and whimsical piece, but in truth, it's a lot more. So.
And Paul, I'm going to rudely interrupt you here. We've
please.
got about 5 minutes left in your presentation. I just want to see how long the story is because I know everyone is going to want to see the piece you're working on right now. Perfect.
Very
all right.
short. Very
Wonderful.
short.
Thank you.
Okay. The stage we set in all our lives, to be majestic our pleasure derives. And through the years we play a song, from young to old, a life so long. We start off small with no repercussions, banging our drum with melodic percussion. But our tastes refine as time grows on, knowing our morals and ethics are strong. And as we get older, we sound the trumpet, sharing our knowledge as we reach the summit. The song we play can appear a fury to a rougher world that is our jury. We learn to be brave, strong, and stand tall. But in truth, our inner child conducts it all. So that's the kind of things I do with my sculptures and writing stories. But again, music, inspired very deeply. And Alice in Wonderland, extremely important to me. And yet I can't sculpt what Disney has created. I am totally inspired by the book and a song by Jefferson Airplane and Grace Slick called White Rabbit. And you may know the song, but I went to town, and actually I'm working on this right here. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to bring you around here to see some of my works in person and end up with this piece that many of my collectors have been waiting to hear about or to see. Let's see if I can do this. This is the Jester piece, several of my other pieces. This is the Monopoly-esque piece, which is fun because it's very much my tornado of chaos, I call it, which really denotes the whole game too. Counting Sheep, Amelia, and finally, oh yes, that is Amelia Earhart tribute. This is White Rabbit. And it will end up being like this. Hopefully you can get a good picture of that. But
yes, it looks great.
Yeah, each piece will be also separate, so they can be brought home individually. The Dormouse. But so that's really, reading more of my crazy stories, that's really where I believe Lewis Carroll is such an inspiration to me and to so many people. And I want to thank him for it and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Paul. Gorgeous, gorgeous art. And
thank you.
I have a question that might not have an answer.
Okay.
Well, actually, part one has an answer. How old do you think you were when you first read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland?
Ooh, read the book? Probably early teens. Okay. Yeah. A friend gave me that book, and it was just blew me away. So
the question that may not have an answer is the John Tenniel illustrations in the original Lewis Carroll book. They're not really that child friendly. I feel like, it was a political cartoonist who made them. Why do you think they've had such an effect on all of us when we're exposed to them when we're very young, for the most part? Why do you think they have such an effect on you?
I think because they were so strange and different. We were all brought up with, Walt Disney gave them the fun, childlike, dreamlike essence. But for those of us that like that bizarre, macabre era, I think that's where it really impacts. Especially me with my art. It's great.
And I want to assure our next speaker, Paul and I are going to go over just 2 or 3 minutes with the Q&A, but there's a break after you, my next speaker. So don't worry, you will have your full time, of course. From the Q&A here, several people are wondering, are these multiples or one-offs, one-of-a-kind pieces?
They are editions, whether it's 50 editions. Usually in the earlier stages of my career, I was doing very limited editions. I'm now fortunately, I was in 14 galleries earlier this year and growing, and that was taking up the edition size. So now I'm doing editions of 200.
200. All right. Excellent. Yeah. We love a specific answer. And people are also wondering more about your technique. So you work in bronze, but do you sculpt in clay first? I believe that's what's behind you, right? Probably.
Yes. Actually, this is clay. It's specifically made for casting bronze. So I will make this one edition, and then we make a silicone mold of it, actually a series of molds to be able to pour the bronze into that mold. The coloring of it is done with blow torches and chemicals, and takes generally around 3 to 5 months to make each piece, depending on the difficulty of it.
Amazing. And I believe, so you said you're in 14 different galleries right now. I know one of them is San Diego, right? Where you currently reside? Excellent.
Yes.
I will have to go check that out for sure.
Yeah. I was distributing in Belgium for a while. I'm looking into European countries again, but I'm mostly in Florida, Hawaii, California, Vegas, and different places. I've been really blessed.
You prefer warmer climes, apparently.
Yes. I was really blessed during COVID. I was in a couple galleries, but when COVID hit, galleries were opening up. I guess people were stuck at home and looking at their walls and shelves and wanting something new. And galleries took me on, and my work seemed to really be appreciated.
We needed a little whimsy during lockdown for sure.
We absolutely do.
And we will finish our last question. Ooh, I think this is a really good idea. Ella is wondering, have you ever considered doing a chessboard?
So,
I mean, you've got a good start right there, right?
Yeah. I did a chessboard in college with ceramic clay and fired. It was great fun. Great fun. Wish I knew what happened to that piece. I created the Battle of Chess, which stood about 3 feet tall. And now I'm working on this little piece right here. A full chessboard, not sure. Detailing something really tiny is very difficult, but I love the idea. I love the idea. This may be the start of something bigger.
Excellent. Okay, and I will leave everyone with a fun fact. I divulged to Paul that I repeatedly contacted Grace Slick to try to get her to be a part of this conference. And he said, oh yeah, I've tried to contact her too. She has his contact form on her website for her and her manager. That makes it sound like you can just drop a line to Grace Slick, but no response for either of us. Can you believe it? I tell you.
Yes. 2025 is around the corner.
That's a good point. Paul, thank you so much for being here and sharing your art with everyone. I mean, I'll send you the chat transcript later because people just nonstop were just amazed with your art, just full of praise.
Well,
thank you so much. And it was so
I appreciate you having me.
Hear your inspiration, Lewis Carroll and otherwise. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right.